So we are recording now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. As you know, today we are talking about creating an academic timeline. So I do like presentations to be interactive. So again, feel free to ask questions as we go. Okay. So again, welcome folks who are joining us today. We're so happy you're here and hopefully you'll benefit from this presentation, which is geared to our junior cohort. So we'll be talking about creating an academic timeline, go into detail about how you can best prepare for applying to graduate school, okay? But before we get started, I wanted to put this quote here. It's John Wooden. Is anyone here familiar with John Wooden? Do you know who he is? Thumbs up, maybe, if you know who he is. Okay. So John Wooden was the UCLA Bruins basketball coach, and he won a lot of national championships and is very well known for that. I think he won like 7 in a row, and that was like a record breaker because up until that point, no one had won more than 4 in a row. So anyway, I really love this quote because he always talked about with his basketball players that failure to prepare was preparing to fail, right? And so why this is relevant today is because we're going to be talking about all the things that you'll be sort of wanting to think about as you get closer to applying to graduate school your senior year. And so just wanted to share that. I love this quote personally. Okay. So for our agenda today, what I'm hoping you'll get information about is we'll be talking a lot about junior and senior year tasks and goals. So what should you be focusing on for fall quarter, winter quarter, spring quarter, right? So we kind of sort of break it down. Senior year tasks and goals as well. So summer, fall, winter, and spring. And then we end the presentation by showing you a timeline that you can feel free to print out, sort of keep in your binder if it helps with organizing your graduate school preparation tasks. Okay, any questions up until this point? I mean, we're just getting started, so. All right. So your junior year fall quarter, what are you focusing on? So here you want to be focusing in on your tasks, okay? So this is updating your CV. Most of you probably have resumes. Resumes are a bit different from CVs. CVs sort of outline all of the research projects that you've been doing, the different internships if you have any. So we'll be focusing on updating your CV, your junior year fall quarter, okay? So something that you can just sort of keep in mind. We are going to start developing as well in the fall quarter a list of potential summer programs. So starting to look at where you would be interested in doing a summer research program, if it's in person, perhaps out of state. I mean, right now, this year and last year, they've been virtual. But, in years prior, students have gone to Michigan, they've gone to Washington, they've just gone to so many different places. The University of Santa Barbara offers their summer programs as well. It's called the Academic Research Consortium. And that's the one I actually did as a McNair Scholar. And so I really love that program. So again, just starting to think about summer, potential summer programs that you'd be interested in. And the reason for this is because you want to get more research experience, right? Because that makes you a bit more competitive when you apply your senior year to fall programs, to graduate programs, sorry. So the goals by the end of fall quarter are to develop strong relationships with professors. You want to keep strengthening your research skills, and you want to aim for strong grades. Now, we are still in, current circumstances of the pandemic. And so this may be impacted for you given different stressors, different situations or circumstances. But every student has been on the same boat, and this is something that you can address, in your statement of purpose, which we'll be talking about a little bit more. So just the tasks to keep in mind: updating your CV, developing your summer programs, and then continue to sort of build relationships with faculty mentors. Before, remote learning, this could be like going to office hours or emailing professors to talk to them about the research. So you just kind of want to stay in touch, because for the winter quarter, you will be talking to faculty about letters of recommendation for summer programs, right? So typically the summer programs will ask for one or two letter of recommendations. So you want to have sort of someone in mind that you can ask. So in your winter quarter, you want to submit summer program applications. In the fall, you've already identified where you would want to go. So you submit in the winter, and then you continue working on your research project. So research is sort of throughout junior and senior year, especially if you're a McNair Scholar. But if you're not, then you want to keep working on research, whether you're doing research with another faculty mentor, you're part of a lab, you just sort of want to keep that consistent. So what are the goals for the end of the winter quarter? Again, you want to aim for strong grades. You want to improve and increase your vocabulary for GRE. So for our students, McNair Scholars, we have a GRE prep course, and we'll talk more about it as time gets closer. But for folks, you can start looking at other programs probably that can help you prepare for the GRE, okay? And then you, again, still want to improve your research skills. So your spring quarter, so this is, we're sort of moving along, and just a snapshot of what to expect. So in the spring, you'll want to start creating a graduate school list, right? So similarly to the summer research program, what schools are you interested in going? Do you want to move out of state? Is a friend of yours at another college that you'd be interested in attending? So starting to think about those things, can you move away? For a lot of people, family, it's not sustainable, right? Maybe you help you help your household financially and you can't move out. So you're just starting to think about this, because it will be coming up in the future, right? Whether you decide to stay in state or out of state. So you'll start creating that graduate school list, sort of doing your shopping around. You'll start identifying and asking people about letters of recommendation. So remember, when you ask someone a letter of recommendation, ideally, preferably, it's someone that you have built this relationship with. If it's a research mentor, you would probably ask them. I think it's a little harder for students when they ask letters of recommendation, but they haven't really worked one-on-one with that person before. Or maybe they'll say, I've wanted a letter of recommendation, and they've only talked to the professor once, and the professor doesn't really know who they are, right? It gets a little bit difficult, because then at that point, the letter is going to say, the faculty mentor is probably going to say, this student got an A in my class, and they sat in the front and always raised their hands and engaged, and that's not as strong as a faculty mentor saying, for instance, Laura was, always engaged. She turned things in on time. She was always willing to assist with any projects. She really contributed to the research team ideas and the development of the project, right? So that's why it's important to sort of build these relationships ahead of time. And then, you'll take your GRE preparation course for the McNair Scholars, and then you'll take the GRE exam. One thing to keep in mind is that the GRE exam has sort of been discussed very heavily across graduate programs, and there's been sort of this conversation that there's a possibility that they're going to be removed. I know my program, the Counseling, Clinical, and School Psychology program, has removed it. We're not asking for GRE scores anymore, which I think is really phenomenal. So remember, as you're creating your graduate school list, you're also looking at what are they, what are they requiring GRE scores? What's the average GPA from every class that they admit? Who would you work with if you went to that graduate school? Right, all those details. So that's just sort of like a side note for the GRE. You want to start checking, if you even need it to begin with, but most likely there will be one program that at least requires it, right? Because you're applying to like 10 to 15 your senior year for McNair. So you'll take it. GRE courses are, again, for the scholars, it's provided to you. But if not, right, there's still tons of books that can help you prepare. So I remember I got some from Amazon, and I know friends who took GRE courses that weren't McNair scholars. So again, you're just doing things to prepare, okay? Any questions so far? I want to make sure I'm not going too fast. And feel free to put things in the chat. I can't see it because I don't know how to multitask and do that, but I will get to your questions at the end. Okay, your goals by the end of summer. It's continuing your research project. Again, aiming for strong grades. I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is really important, right? And then having conversations with faculty mentor about graduate school. So you want to start talking with your faculty mentor about, do they have any recommendations of programs that you should look into? Do they know anyone that they can recommend you to, right? It's always about like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think it's a little bit of both. For instance, I've worked with scholars who have had faculty mentors who know someone else in a different program and talk very highly about their student, right? And so that creates that relationship for them. So then when they do go to that school, they have someone that they can sort of work with. That person can show them the ropes, or I don't know, show them the city. I mean, it just depends, right? So again, it's all about cultivating these relationships. Okay, so then your juniors, your spring quarter, you're sort of wrapping up all these different things, and then your senior year, right? And your summer quarter. Here, the tasks are, because you will be applying right in the fall, it's to contact graduate advisors and faculty from prospective schools. So we'll have you turn in assignments that require you to email faculty and ask them if they are admitting any students in the fall. Some students like to reach out to graduate students and say, hey, can we have an informal interview or meeting? And then you ask them like, how do you like the program? How are you funded? What's the culture like? You get to see if students are, when you meet with graduate students, you either get to see if they're really happy and they like their program, or they're miserable, because that's also true. For instance, when I've had students contact me and say like, hey, I would like to learn more about the program. And I tell them, I love the program. I would encourage, I would recommend this program to anybody. But I think it's not true of every graduate school. So again, talking to graduate students will give you a good sense of the graduate program itself, because they hopefully will be more transparent with you. If applicable, again, retake the GRE exam if you want. Some students do that, and GRE subject exam. A lot of students don't need the subject exam. Again, it just depends if this is true for you. So you'd have to find that out. When you're doing your graduate school list, you also want to see if they're asking you for a GRE subject test. Not everyone needs it, so it's different. And we'll give you a template that tells you what to look for in each graduate school. Okay, again, these will be assignments that you're turning in. And one of the most important things personally that I think takes a lot of time and effort is you're finishing your first drafts of your personal statement and your statement of purpose. So most graduate programs ask for both a personal statement and a statement of purpose. Some of them just ask for one, your statement of purpose. So essentially what these are is they're getting to know you, right? You're telling them what you've been doing as an undergraduate student, the research, what you want to continue researching in graduate school. So you're making a case as to why they should pick you. Why should they pick you? Because you're a good fit, because your research aligns with their research. Because, you know, maybe they study culture in your subject, right? And you want to sort of learn more about that perspective or that lens, right? So you would communicate that in your statement of purpose. These two things, from my own experience and just an experience working with students, it can be a lot of work. It can be it can be taxing, especially for students who might not be as comfortable talking about themselves or making themselves look good or sound good on paper. But, you know, we're sort of here to help you through that. There's tons of examples that you can read. So get a sense of, you know, what you might want yours to look like. One piece of advice that I got when I was writing mine was, you know, you don't want to overshare. You don't want to be too personal in your personal statement. There are some things that you might want to defer away from. I actually have a really good article on this. It's called KISS, The Kisses of Death in Applying to Graduate School. And it sort of gives you advice into like what to include and what not to include. So if anyone is interested in that article, please, put it in the chat, just say interested in article, and I will send it to you. It is so, so helpful. So anyway, let me know. I've shared it with many students and they're like, okay, after reading this, I'm going to change my personal statement or my statement of purpose. So, and just one last thing on that, you write a lot of drafts, okay? So you're finishing your first drafts your senior year summer, and then you're sort of, you know, our writing specialist, Chris, for the scholars, you'll be turning those in, getting feedback. You're probably getting feedback from your mentors, graduate mentors, a friend, right? You're just trying to get it to the best shape possible, because remember, graduate programs are getting hundreds of these statement of purpose, hundreds of personal statements, right? In one application cycle, they could get maybe, let's say 200, right? And so how can we make your statement of purpose or personal statement stand out, right? Like, how can we get the faculty to sort of lock eyes with your statement? So it has to be catchy. The first sentences has to grab the reader's attention. And you want to sort of, you know, talk about your research interests, your research goals and aspirations in a way that's like sort of storytelling, like a narrative, right? I mean, I'm sure you've all read books. And so think about what makes it your favorite book or your favorite article. So again, we'll share more about how to do this, but, you know, just some things to keep in mind. You want to keep maybe your senior year, summer of your senior year, a bit more flexible if possible, because you will be spending a lot of time on this. And then you're conducting research, hopefully at a different summer research program. So it starts getting really busy, you know, because you're doing summer research, you're trying to get your statements, you're doing GRE, you're preparing to apply in the fall. So the goals are to have your graduate school list finalized, secured your letter of recommendation writers. So what we like to encourage our students is to send the prospective letter writers a packet, an email packet where you include a writing sample, you include your CV, you include an about me. Some students like to write in about me. So you're telling the letter writers what maybe more information so they can write a stronger letter for you. And, you know, you want to have your first drafts of all your statements. So lots of stuff to work on. Okay, your senior year of your fall quarter. So you're applying to graduate school. So this is exciting, very daunting as well for a lot of students. So September and October, you're giving recommenders your application packet with everything they need. I just mentioned this, I got ahead of myself, right? So you're thinking about ordering transcripts. I was a McNair Scholar. I think I may have forgotten to mention, but I remember in my sample packet, I included unofficial transcripts, I included a writing sample, different information about me that I wanted my letter writers to know, right? So just, you want to include whatever is going to help get a strong letter. In September and October, you're identifying and applying for extramural funding and obtaining fee waivers. So here, the McNair Scholars, right, we give you waivers to apply to graduate school, which is really nice. So we'll be following up with you about like, hey, make sure you're reaching out to these, you're reaching out to get the fee waivers from us. Raquel is usually the one that takes care of this. In October, you're finalizing your drafts of personal statement and statement of purpose. So you've been working on these since the summer. So, whoops, I got ahead. So that's sort of what you're doing. In November, or you're ordering official transcripts. Some schools will only ask for unofficial transcripts, and then you're also ordering your GRE scores if applicable. And then in December, you're completing your graduate school applications and you're remembering to breathe. So in my experience with working with students, they are tired by December, reasonably so. You've been working so hard for this moment. So we're sort of here, to provide that emotional support if needed. One point that I think is really important to think about is that when you're shopping around from graduate schools, you want to see when their deadline is, because most graduate programs, from what I've seen in my experience, the deadline is due in December, like December 1st, December 15th. But there are some programs that do things a bit differently. For instance, the Counseling Clinical School Psychology program at UCSB, their deadline is November 15th. So that is a month in advance from all the other programs, right? And so when I found out this information, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have until December. I have to get everything done, by November 1st. So again, you just want to check so you're not sort of rushing last minute. So your goals are you're still doing research, and then McNair Scholars have the opportunity to submit a paper for publication in our journal. So this is highly encouraged. This is can help you become a stronger candidate for graduate school applications, something you could put on your CVs. For those who are here today who aren't, are joining us, aren't McNair Scholars, there's tons of publication opportunities. So if you're working with a mentor and they tell you, hey, would you be interested in being on this article, you want to take advantage of those things, because they do sort of make you more competitive. And if you haven't come across those opportunities, that's okay too, right? I think when it comes to applying to graduate schools, what weighs very, very heavily for most programs, at least I think this is true from what I've seen, is your statement of purpose and your personal statement, right? So let's say you have a 3.3 GPA, okay? And the program is asking for a 3.5, right? And you still decide to apply. In your personal statement, you can sort of address what happened, right? Was it because you were working 2 to 3 jobs to help your family financially? Was it because maybe you weren't really interested in the topic at the time, didn't really have a clear goal of your career goals? I mean, what happened, right? I've seen students with lower GPAs than the ones that are being asked of them, or even GRE scores way lower, be admitted to these really great programs because they were able to say, look, I didn't really have time to study for the GRE. I was taking care of my siblings, or, there was, just other stressors that happened that made it very difficult for me, but I am very interested. So don't let those things discourage you. You can always talk about them in your statements. Okay, senior year, your winter quarter. So this is when students start getting really nervous because you're starting to hear back from schools. So you are applying for FAFSA in January and you're continuing to apply for graduate programs. Some graduate programs like masters, their deadline isn't until like February or March. So again, you want to look at when those are. You're starting to receive notifications from different programs. You're visiting campuses in person. If maybe that will be true for us next year or in 2 years, whenever you apply. And you're talking to faculty and you're talking to graduate students. So you're sort of still, doing all of that. And you're submitting your revised paper to the McNair Journal if this is something that you decided to do. But this is a very exciting time because you're either going to hear good news, you're admitted, or you're going to hear maybe it's just not the right time for you. It's not the best fit. So lots of exciting things. The goals by the end of winter quarter, you're attending a prospective graduate student day if it's offered from, by your program, and you're working on research. So, excuse me, some programs like to admit their students and say, hey, come visit us on campus so you can meet us. And it's good to do that because then you can get a sense of where you would be spending 5 or 6 years of your life, right? If you decide to get your PhD with them. Some students, you're doing your shopping around. So maybe 4 schools invite you to go see them. 3 schools you think, oh gosh, I can't see myself. Either it's the weather, racial ethnic population, lots of different things. But there's one school that just feels right for you. And you're like, I could see myself here. I like the people, they seem really nice, right? So this is why it's important to do that. Go in person when possible. Okay, your senior year, your spring quarter. So April 15th, what you're doing at this point is you're deciding on a graduate school and you're submitting your SIR. So that's your statement of intent to register, okay? So April 15th is traditionally, historically, has been the last day that students have to submit an SIR. This means that when you are admitted to graduate school in January, let's say, for instance, you get admitted to a program in January, you have until April 15th, unless it's changed this year, which I don't think, you have until April 15th to make your decision, okay? So during this time, you're hearing back from different programs, you are shopping around, you're visiting, you're getting to know people, you're trying to make the best decision for yourself. We do encourage students to sort of make a decision, not quickly. You want to make an informed decision, but like, end of March, possibly, because remember, there are students on the waiting list. So if you're holding on to a position that you're not going to go to that school, but you haven't let them know, then that means someone on the waiting list that could be notified next, if you say no to that school, could get a head start. So you just want to think about those things, but don't feel pressured to make a decision before April 15th, because this is sort of national, right? Everyone has until April 15th to make a decision. And also, you want to use your time from the time you get admitted to April 15th or sooner to see if you can negotiate financial packages. So maybe the school is giving you no funding. You want to ask, like, hey, you can say something like, this is true for a lot of students, I'm a self-supporting student, my family doesn't help me. Is there any funding opportunities, any grants, any scholarships, any fellowships? So you're sort of like working behind the scenes to see, to see preparing to make this transition in the fall. So you're still doing research, you're completing your senior thesis, because for McNair Scholars, you will be turning that into us. That sort of officializes your time in the program, right? You're turning in this completed research project, and you're probably presenting at IRCA. If you're not presenting at IRCA, I forgot the name of I don't know, remember the official name. I know this is the acronym, but it's at UCSB, and it's an undergraduate research undergraduate research consortium, probably. Anyway, it's like a place where you can go present your research. And, you know, but maybe you're presenting at other conferences that are popular in your major. So for psychology, they have the, you know, in the Latinx population, they have the National Latinx Psychological Association, which I was able to attend as an undergraduate student. So again, you're just sort of presenting your research. You don't have to be a graduate student to wait to do that. And you're finalizing your plans for transitions to graduate school. So here during January to April, you're thinking, you know, I've seen students sort of be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting all these, you know, I'm getting letters and I'm not really sure where to go. My family, you know, finances. So it's a big step. It's a big commitment. And I like to normalize that for students, because especially if you're the first in your family to go to college, you know, and get a graduate degree, it can be really hard for your family members or significant others to sort of understand this, right? So we're sort of here to help you navigate that. So let us know. And what else did I want to say? Let's see. I think I covered, yeah. Okay, so this is a timeline I was saying at the beginning when we discussed our agenda. So this is your junior year, right? So in September, all the way from September to December, you're meeting with professors, you're doing research, and you're keeping track of your experience with your CV. So you're getting all those materials ready. We're currently in July, so September, right? Juniors, you're rising juniors right now. So September, it's sort of when, you know, we start turning in, we start assigning those different assignments. And then your senior year, so up until January, February, March, and April, you're, as we discussed, summer programs, applications, letters of recommendations, you're doing research. In April, you're doing the GRE prep with the McNair Scholars Program. And then in May, at that point, we consider you a rising senior. So things are about to get real because you're applying in September, right? Or December. But you're looking into graduate programs in the May, a lot of recommendations, GRE tests, you're doing research. July, you're preparing your statements of purpose. In August, you're, you know, finalizing your CV, getting your letters, you're retaking the GRE if this applies to you, if you want to. I know a student who took the GRE, didn't do as well, took it again, did a little bit better. On average, students only get a few points higher. So sometimes it sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. So it's up to, you know, up to your discretion. And then September, we have still working on statements. October, same thing. And then November, transcript GRE scores. And then December, you're applying there. But remember, some programs have earlier deadlines. So it could be November that you're applying, or it could be later, early in the year, like January, February, or March, okay? Because our McNair Scholars decide to, you're usually applying to both master's and PhD programs, okay? So, you know, a lot of students say, well, you know, as they get closer to applying their senior year to graduate school, they say, I'm not really sure I want to do a PhD. I don't feel really prepared. I feel like I need to take a gap year. What do I do, right? And what's always advised is, you apply to both, you apply to master's and you apply to PhD programs. And you have one whole year, right, to hear back from them. In that year, you may get in, you might not, and you can make that decision when you start hearing back from them. So, yeah. All right, so that is the timeline. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can take a look at the chat. Give me 1 second. And okay, so any questions about anything we just discussed? We still have about 20 minutes, 18 minutes. Any questions? Any worries or concerns? Let's see. Is it possible to get a copy of the article? Yes, Ezequiel, I will send the article. Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to see if I can, does anybody know if I can attach it to this chat? Would it work? I have to find the article. But I'll send it if you send me an email. Do you only need one letter of rec when applying? Good question, Laura. So you need at least 3. Yeah, you need, most programs need at least 3. So you want these to be strong, right? You know, it could be that just one letter is coming from a faculty mentor who you know you've been working with for a long time. They know you pretty well, and you know that letter is going to be strong. And the other 2 might not be as strong, but they can still sort of testify to your research abilities, your interpersonal skills. That's fine too. And I think when you're asking for letters, you know, there's a level of honesty, I think, that is appropriate, and that can be like when you're asking them about to get a letter of recommendation from them, you can just say, you know, I'm interested in applying. Would you feel comfortable and able to write me a letter of recommendation? Hopefully faculty, if they know they can write you a strong letter, will say yes. And if they feel like they don't have substantial information or content to say, then hopefully they say no, right? So then that means that you're able to sort of look for someone else, because letters of recommendation also weigh. But again, don't let that, you know, if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have anybody in mind, what am I going to do? A lot of students, you know, it's a big university, so it's kind of hard to build those, you know, those close relationships, but don't let that stop you. You know, there's always sort of time to start building those relationships now, especially if you're a junior, you have some time. Now, if you're applying, you know, this fall, it gets a little tighter, but it's still possible. Thanks, Laura, for that question. Yeah, no problem. Other questions? Maybe folks who are joining us, I know it can be a little awkward, but feel free to ask any questions. Or any questions or concerns that you have. I know it's a lot of information too, so that's okay if you don't have any questions. How are you all feeling? Does this feel stressful, overwhelming? Do you feel confident? Is the application process the same for both PhD and master's programs? Good question, Arsalan. They are similar in a lot of ways in that they both will probably ask you, from what I've seen, for a statement of purpose or personal statement. Usually are asking for the same transcripts, right? There are some slight differences. For instance, the PhD programs will ask for a writing sample. Most masters I've found from my own experience and that of working with students that they don't ask for writing samples. So there are some slight differences, but not significantly from what I've seen. Like most master's programs don't want GRE scores, PhD programs do. But then I found the opposite to be true. Some masters are like, we need GRE, whereas the PhD will be like, we don't. So again, similar but different as well. I know that's not a very clear answer, but you can expect it to be some similarities at times and also differences. But generally, yeah, it's sort of like very similar. Yeah, no problem. Other questions? These are good questions. Do most master programs offer a spot in their oh, this is a good question, Brittany. So, or is it a separate process? Yes. So for when you, there's a lot of graduate programs, PhD programs that are dual, right? So you sort of pick up a master's along the way. So what we encourage our McNair scholars is to apply to these PhD programs that offer the master's and the PhD, because you're applying as an undergraduate, right? So that means that you would go straight from undergrad and you don't have a master's. But there is a lot of programs that do that, which is why we have this program, right? Because those are the PhD programs we're going to be targeting. So for instance, I went in straight from undergrad, and then 2 years later from being in the program, I got my master's. So I picked it up along the way. And there were students who already had a master's and they just picked up a double master's. You also want to think about, some programs, even though you do have a master's, so let's say you decide not to go straight into your PhD, you do a master's for 2 to 3 years, and then you apply to a PhD program, which is usually about 5 years and on average, 5 to 6 years. Some programs, from what I've heard, is they won't necessarily let you skip over all of the master classes, right? So you still have to take some. It's possible that you'll be able to waive a lot of the courses. Like I know several students in my program came in with the master's, they were able to waive out of like, let's say 4 courses, but they still had to go through most of the requirements that we sort of set as a program. So yeah, we're looking at dual programs, ones that take undergraduate students so they can pick up their master's along the way. There are also programs, for instance, I was admitted to Arizona, not to their PhD program, I was admitted to their master's program, but they do have a PhD program there. So I thought that was interesting. I thought, okay, do I get their master's and then I can apply to their PhD? And I think that's how it works. Most students who apply for their master's end up just transitioning over to the PhD. So it's not necessarily a separate process. It's the same one, which is exciting, I think, for a lot of people. So to get your master's and your PhD in total, it's like 5 years, 5 or 6 years versus 5 in the program. If you get a master's somewhere else, it'd be like 5 or 3, it'd be like 8 years, right? If you get a master's for 3 years and then you go into a PhD, that's 5 years, that's 8 years. Yeah. I hope that was helpful. Maybe a bit too much information, but yeah, but most masters will offer a spot in their PhD if that's how they do things. Other questions? No problem. These are all great questions. I know we have folks from the PUGS Bootcamp program as well. When would it be a good time in the timeline to talk with master's PhD admission committees about special accommodations? Good question. I would say maybe in the summer before you apply. So you're applying in the fall, right? Maybe that summer when you're emailing faculty, prospective faculty mentors to see if they're admitting someone in the fall. You would probably tell them about your situation and say, I'm applying this fall cycle. However, these are my, special circumstances. And then you can see sort of what they'll tell you. But I would say probably summer, because that's when students start reaching out to inquire about lab openings and starting to get to like do the informal interviews. So it's possible that you even set up an informal interview with the prospective faculty mentor and you tell them your situation. But this is a good question because, life happens, things change and all of that. So, okay. What are the different components of the GRE if we still have time? Yes, good question. So it's verbal, right? So we have the verbal component, we have the math one and the writing one, and then the specialty topic if applicable to you. So these are things we'll be covering in the GRE prep course when it's time, but that's usually, the main ones. if anyone else remembers another one that I'm forgetting, please feel free to share. But that's, I think it's verbal, writing, reading. I think reading is also one. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it sort of gets done, and people find the practice exams to be helpful. Yeah, no problem. All right, we still have a few minutes, folks. So yeah, feel free to keep in these questions coming in. And for folks who are joining us today, if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, feel free to email me. For everyone else, it's going to be on GauchoSpace. So I'm putting my email here. If you want the Kisses of Death article, I can also send that to you. I just need you to send me an email, please. And I think someone had asked for it already. Ezequiel, was that you? Yes, so I will make note to myself to send it. Or I can send it to all the juniors. Would that be helpful? I'll probably just do that. Okay, I see some thumbs up. Okay. All right. So this recording is going to be made available on GauchoSpace and also on YouTube, our YouTube channel. So folks who are joining us today, you will have access to this video should you need it, okay? And all right, so I guess we can end 6 minutes early. Thanks everyone for joining us. I hope this was helpful. I'm always happy to sort of answer any questions you have. So feel free to stick around after this presentation if you want to chat some more. Okay, otherwise, thanks for being here and good luck on, yeah, graduate school journeys. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. And is it Rosaline? Rosaline? I'm not sure if you're still on, Rosaline. Probably not. If you are, you're muted. Let's see. All right, not sure if you're on, Rosalind, but I just sent you a message back, okay? Hopefully hear from you soon. Bye-bye.